Hi, my name is Bobby, and welcome to hoopsgra. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the unique way Deltarune and Undertale create fear. If you're somehow unaware of these games and their impact on the gaming scene and internet culture as a whole, let me take you on a little journey. In 2015, game developer and composer Toby Fox released Undertale, an indie RPG that received glowing reviews from critics and casual audiences alike. The game reached heights that no one expected it to reach, especially not its developer. If you aren't familiar with the game, you're likely at least familiar with some of its aspects. It was praised for its looter narrative consistency, subversions of expectations, and its use of the concept often referred to as breaking the fourth wall. Undertale's success led to Fox developing a game that he had envisioned for years. Deltarune was the spiritual successor to Undertale. Following in its indie RPG footsteps, Deltarune and Undertale share much of the same charm, writing, gameplay, mechanics, and even characters. I'm not here today to discuss the relationship between these games lore-wise, but if you're interested in that, I'll link to a fantastic video that delves into the topic further. Among many things I've already listed, Deltarune and Undertale share another similarity, that being the occasional tonal shift from a heartwarming narrative to what can only be described as sheer horror. Toby Fox makes good use of the components that make a good horror story and sprinkles them into an otherwise very cheerful game. First, we'll get into how this affects. First and foremost, Undertale is a very lonely game. To anyone who hasn't actually played the game, this should sound strange. The most popular part of the Undertale is the many hilarious and well-written characters, and while it's not exactly untrue to market the game with that fact, much of the game also consists of these serene and on occasion unnerving, quiet, lonely experiences. Another way Undertale sets to unsettle you is by not explaining much about certain experiences. Gaster could realistically get his own section here, hell, he could get his own video, but the main thing I'm trying to get at is how his lore isn't shoved in your face. In fact, thanks to the fun value, much of his content that gets into detail about his past can only be accessed during one interaction per playthrough. This is likely to make things like the community solving mysteries together more cohesive, but it also leads to these strange moments where an unsuspecting player can encounter a cryptic hint to the existence, or lack thereof, of Dr. Gaster. The Gaster followers / goners provide an unsettling and, to a newcomer, downright confusing hint to Gaster, which definitely feeds into the fear that the game is trying to create. Flowey on his own isn't exactly the creepiest character in this game, but when you take a closer look at him, he's responsible for some pretty big scares. This isn't a massive detail, but at certain points in the game, you can backtrack to catch a glimpse of Flowey following you, which, partnered with the many weird, silent, lonely segments of this game, can be really unnerving. Another more significant Flowey scare is Photoshop Flowey is the neutral route final boss, as well as a boss you encounter in your first pacifist playthrough. Photoshop Flowey's design is gross and uncomfortable to look at, and its attacks are a lot different than pretty much anything else you've experienced in the game so far. The fight is so insanely overwhelming and seemingly hard that most people's first instinct is just to assume that the fight is scripted and
you just lose. You lose this, right? You just lose this, right? You have to just...
All that paired with the frankly hellish music leads to a fight that's sure to freak out new players. If you manage to make it through a playthrough where you spare everybody, you're rewarded with a new explorable section of the map. The True Lab not only locks you in until you complete the section, not only has the most unnerving track in the whole game to me, but also forces you to fight scary, creepy amalgamates of all the creatures you've spared up to this point. My last topic concerning Undertale is easily the heaviest. It's secret to literally almost no one that the result of going out of your way to kill each and every monster in the underground results in the story shifting many of its elements to what is known by the fans as the genocide run. The whole route by itself could take up a whole video, but for this video we're just going to look at some of the most important aspects for what I'm trying to get at. First, let's get the most obvious part out of the way. Killing literally every monster you spent the last 8+ hours befriending is insane. And that act is terrifying. If the killing itself isn't enough to freak you out, the game has you covered. The encounter with Kara, while terrifying on its own, comes to a climax when the game lets you sit. You're left for an uncomfortable amount of time just sitting there, by yourself. And if the entire genocide route didn't hammer this home enough, the game finally makes you sit with the fact that you are truly and utterly alone. But enough about that. Let's talk about... Easily enough, the first example of what I'm trying to get is literally the intro to the game. The character creator, internally referred to as the Goner Maker, wastes no time in making you uncomfortable. From the creepy, all-caps, matter-of-fact voice narrating the whole process to the music reminiscent of Gaster's theme, the character creator sets the uneasy tone it was meant to. The only other thing from Chapter 1 that I think is worth mentioning is this. Chapter 2 is where the ball really gets rolling. Spamton is Spamton. This is where it gets kind of hard to explain, so if you've never actually played the game, it's kind of hard to explain Spamton's full effect. You just kind of have to be there. But I'll do the best I can. Almost every encounter you have with Spamton evokes the loneliness of Undertale. Your first fight with him is alone in some alley where this is shooting bullets at you. The next time you encounter him also has to be alone, in his shop. Everything about how this shop is framed is unnerving. The music is weird, his face is weird, his text is weird, his dialogue is weird, and he is weird. Then he makes you go into a creepy dungeon, by yourself, again, and the dungeon is creepy ambient music and weird obstacles, and this all culminates in a secret boss fight. The music, while being the absolute best song on the OST, evokes a feeling of dread, like you're finally fighting something unstoppable. The fight itself could get its own section, but the most important part for analysis is the ending. Spamton finally sees freedom, and then he just dies. And this part isn't even just me. Even the Lancer fan club, yeah, that's what I named them, agrees that something was up. Chris, our usually stoic self-insert, is visibly shaken, and no matter what dialogue options you choose, they're noticeably freaked out by what happened. Also, my headcanon voice for Spamton is Germa.
It's never gonna happen! You'll never dunk me, you fuckers! Fuck all of you! It's not gonna happen!
It means titty.
Now, that would have already been enough content for the video, but one specific aspect of Chapter 2 stands above all else when it comes to these games seriously dipping their toes in horror. I'd go as far as to say it's more impactful than the genocide route in Undertale. I'm of course talking about Snowgrave. The loneliness Undertale makes you feel is terrifying, and I don't mean to undercut that, but Deltarune is able to make you feel just as scared with a friendly, innocent face by your side. Noelle was introduced as a minor character in Chapter 1, but she was given a much more active role in Chapter 2, and if you so choose, you can force the main playable character, Chris, to push their lifelong friend to commit genocide for your enjoyment. Where the genocide route had you painfully aware of your active role in what was happening, Chapter 2's alternate route forces the most likable and heartwarming character to be pushed to her limit and gaslit, all for your enjoyment, and the game doesn't let you forget about it. The fight with Birdley showcases how Noelle is desensitized to what she's being forced to do, and the final Spamton fight is downright terrifying. But what I want to focus on for my final section of this video is the encounter with Noelle at the hospital. The screen goes dark as we hear Noelle's inner monologue, and how, although she thinks everything was a dream, she can't shake the feeling that everything was real. She comments on how her voice in her head wasn't Chris, but it was likely the voice of us, the entity controlling Chris's body and soul. We then startle her as Chris, and the scene is interrupted by Susie. There are two things you can do to change this cutscene, and both of them perfectly elevate the horror. If, while Noelle is talking, you press the keyboard key like you are walking towards her, it works. In universe, you walk towards her, making her even more terrified than she already was. What? The other thing that you can do to change the cutscene is, if earlier in the game you take Noelle's watch and equip it to Chris like it's an item, in the cutscene Noelle recognizes the watch, and not only is her reaction terrifying, the implication that doing this inadvertently preemptively reveals to Noelle that her dream was real is a really scary place to leave off the chapter, and I'm seriously anxiously waiting for chapters 3 through 7. And thanks for making it all the way through the video. I really appreciate it. This is my first, official video. The regular content that I usually post on Instagram is, meme-y kind of shitpost stuff. But I feel interested in making more serious stuff. And if this gains literally any traction at all, I'll consider making more stuff like it. In the future, I've got ideas for stuff about Marvel or Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, a lot of stuff like that. So yeah, I really appreciate you making it this far in the video. If you have any questions or comments or anything you want to say, you can leave that right down below. But seriously, thanks for making it this far in the video. I really appreciate it.